They came out, the homeless advocates came out, got us into a couples shelter.
You know, because they want to separate you and do everything like one-on-one, and so trying to do it together is kind of hard. You know, so like there's places we can go, like there's no like rehab and stuff like that. You can't really go together. You know, like the shelter, the couple shelter we were at, there's only 4 in the whole United States, and 2 of them are in Philly.
Cold. Not the postcard kind, the kind that gets inside a parked car before sunrise. Across America, the newest federal count found more than 700,000 people without a home on one night. But that number cannot show every motel room paid until Friday, every couch that runs out, every shelter door still locked in the dark. Tonight we start above the country, then we drive into Michigan, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Traverse City, the Upper Peninsula. Because this is not just a homelessness story. This is what happens when America's housing crisis reaches winter. On the surface, Michigan looks like a comeback story. 83 counties tied by Interstate 75, Detroit's Renaissance Center, Grand Rapids Medical Mile, Mackinac Ferries, and Lake Superior towns. But behind that map, another Michigan moves. After dark, motel keys, car heaters, shelter lines, and rural roads where homelessness rarely appears on camera. To understand America's housing crisis, you can not only look at Los Angeles sidewalks or New York subway platforms. You have to follow it into colder places, quieter places, places where the crisis hides in plain sight. That is where we meet Marlene. She is 58, a composite drawn from public data in real patterns, not one real person. She once cleaned hotel rooms in northern Michigan. Now her day starts by checking whether the car will turn over. This story will take us across Michigan street by street, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Flint, Traverse City, and the long roads north. Not in theory, on the road, block by block. The question is not whether homelessness exists here. The question is why so much of it stays invisible. And before we go further, I want to know what it looks like where you live. Before we go further, tell us where you are watching from. In your part of America, is homelessness visible on the street or hidden in cars, motels, spare rooms, and places most people pass without noticing? Because in Michigan, the road does not always show you the crisis right away. You can drive past a grocery store before sunrise and see nothing unusual. Just a few cars under the lights, a delivery truck backing in, someone scraping ice from a windshield. But one of those cars may be a bedroom. You can pass a motel near a highway exit and think it is just another stop for travelers. A vending machine, a lobby coffee pot, a row of doors facing the parking lot. But one of those rooms may be the last paid night before a family has nowhere to go. You can drive north past smaller towns and dark fields where there are no tent blocks, no camera crews, no famous intersection known around the country. But distance can hide a crisis better than any wall. That is why we are not going to look at Michigan from only one city. We are going to follow the road. From Detroit's service corridors to Grand Rapids' shelter lines. From Lansing's policy buildings to Flint and Saginaw, where old industrial neighborhoods meet new rent pressure. From Traverse City, where tourism and housing collide, to the Upper Peninsula, where help can be miles away and winter is not a backdrop. It is a condition. America counted more than 700,000 people without a home on one night. Michigan's latest federal count found just over 10,000. But those two numbers are not the whole story, because homelessness is not only what appears during a count, it is the phone call before checkout. The friend who says this is the last week, the shelter list that opens tomorrow, the car that starts and the car that does not. So here is the question I want you to hold on to. What percentage of Michigan homes do you think are actually vacant and available for rent or sale? Not empty on paper, not seasonal, not abandoned, actually available? Put your guess in the comments now. Later in this story, we will come back to that number. And when we do, Michigan will start to look very different. The count begins with a night, not a year, not a winter, not every motel checkout, every couch, every car behind a grocery store. One night. In January 2025, Michigan's federal point-in-time count found 10,155 people experiencing homelessness. On paper, most were sheltered. More than 7,000 were in emergency shelter or safe haven. Another 1,360 were in transitional housing, and 1,716 were counted outside unsheltered. Those numbers matter. They represent people a system could see. But a count is also a flashlight. It lights up one moment, one night, one method. And even HUD warns that these counts depend on local reporting, local methods, and limited verification. So when Michigan says 10,155, do not hear a final answer. Hear a snapshot, because the year tells a larger story. Michigan's own 2024 annual report counted 31,211 unique clients moving through the homeless system. That is not a contradiction. It is the difference between one frozen night and 12 months of doors opening and closing. The same report says the average length of homelessness rose from 80 days to 89 days. That means people were not just entering the system. Many were staying longer, waiting longer, and trying longer to find a door that led back indoors. A woman who sleeps in her car in February, finds a couch in March, loses it in April, and enters a shelter in May, may not fit neatly into the image most people carry in their heads. A family may never appear under a bridge. A senior may never push a cart downtown. A young person may not look homeless at all while charging a phone in a library and waiting for a friend to text back. This is why the road matters. The official count gives us a number. The road shows us the movement behind it. And now that we know the count is only the beginning, we need to meet someone living inside the space between the numbers. Marlene is not one real person. She is a composite built from public data service patterns and the kind of lives that disappear between counts. She is 58. For years, she cleaned hotel rooms in northern Michigan. In summer, she could count on hours. Tourists came for the water, the festivals, the long evenings when the sky stayed bright over the lake. She stripped sheets, wiped mirrors, folded towels, and learned which guests left quietly and which ones complained about everything. She had a place then. Not much, but a door, a table by the window, a drawer with medicine in it, a little calendar with rent circled in blue ink. Then the hours changed, the rent changed, the car needed repairs. A friend helped for a while, then the friend's landlord said no more. A motel took what was left of her savings, 1 week at a time, until checkout became a kind of countdown. By February, Marlene was sleeping in the car. Not every night. That is important. Homelessness does not always arrive all at once. Sometimes it comes in pieces. 2 nights in a car, 4 nights on a couch, 1 night in a motel, a morning in a library bathroom, trying to look ordinary before calling another number. At 6:10 a.m., the windshield is white. The inside of the glass is wet from her breath. Her phone is at 18% because she turns it off whenever she is not waiting for a call. In the passenger seat, there is a grocery bag with socks, a prescription bottle, and a folded intake paper she has already read too many times. She starts the engine because she needs heat. Then she turns it off because she needs gas. This is the part the road teaches you. Homelessness in Michigan is not always a row of tents under a highway. Sometimes it is a woman deciding whether to keep the car warm or keep enough fuel to reach the next appointment. By mid-morning, Marlene is in a parking lot behind a store that has not opened yet. A snowplow moves along the edge of the asphalt. People drive past her without knowing she is part of Michigan's homelessness system, part of the annual number, part of the waiting list, part of the story. She does not look like a statistic. She looks like someone trying to get through the next hour. That is why her story matters here before the rent math. And the next hour is where the math begins. Now the road becomes arithmetic, not spreadsheet arithmetic, survival arithmetic. Marlene knows the math before any report says it out loud. If the motel is $80 for one night, that is groceries gone. If the car repair is $400, that is rent money gone. If gas goes into the tank, the phone bill waits. If the phone bill waits, the shelter call may never come through. This is how housing instability works before it becomes homelessness. In Michigan, the 2025 housing wage for a modest two-bedroom rental home is $24.46 an hour. The fair market rent is $1,272 a month. For someone working at the state minimum wage, that math does not bend. It breaks. A full-time job can still leave someone short. A second job can still fail if the hours change. A fixed income can disappear inside rent, utilities, medicine, insurance, and keeping an old car alive. And in Michigan, the car is not optional. It is how you reach work. It is how you reach the food pantry. It is how you reach the shelter appointment. It is also when everything else fails, the last room you have left. So when Marlene turns the engine off to save gas, she is not making a bad choice. She is choosing between bad choices. That is what the rent math does. It turns ordinary bills into a countdown. And once the countdown starts, the next question is not who made one mistake. The next question is why the whole map keeps producing the same mistake. We leave Marlene's parking lot and keep driving. In Detroit, the crisis is easier to see if you know where to look. Not just downtown, not just under an overpass, but near service corridors, day centers, warming spaces, and streets where a person can spend the morning trying to replace one document before losing another. Then the road turns west. In Grand Rapids in Kent County, the count is treated with caution. Local homelessness leaders say the point-in-time count is only one night, not a full-year measure of need. That matters because a shelter line in January is not the same thing as a family moving from couch to couch in September. From there, the road drops into Lansing. Here, the crisis has a different shape. The buildings are official. The language is official. Action plans, funding streams, coordinated entry, diversion, supportive housing. But outside the policy vocabulary, the same question remains. Where does someone sleep tonight while the system decides what category they fit? East toward Flint in Saginaw, the map changes again. There are blocks where old industry left behind houses that may look empty, but empty does not mean available. A house can be boarded, a roof can fail, a landlord can ask more than a fixed income can carry. A person can be surrounded by buildings and still have nowhere to enter. Then north toward Traverse City. This is where Michigan's postcard image becomes complicated. Lakefront tourism needs workers. Restaurants need staff. Hotels need rooms cleaned. But the same towns that depend on service labor can price service workers out. A motel can be a job site in the morning and emergency shelter by night. Farther north, the road opens into distance. In the Upper Peninsula and across rural counties, homelessness can be nearly invisible. Not because it is not there, because there may be no famous block, no crowded sidewalk, no single place where the crisis gathers for the camera. Michigan's balance of state system covers rural counties across a huge part of the state. That means the homeless response is not one city's problem. It is a geography problem, a ride problem, a winter problem, a distance problem. By the time the road reaches a small town after dark, the story has changed. Homelessness is no longer a single image. It is Detroit paperwork, Grand Rapids, shelter, pressure, Lansing, policy, Flint repairs, Traverse City rent, Upper Peninsula distance, different streets, same bottleneck. And the bottleneck is not only money, it is the number of homes people can actually enter. By now, the road has shown us something important. Michigan does have homes. That is the part that can confuse people. Drive through Detroit and you may see boarded houses. Drive through Flint and you may see empty-looking blocks. Drive through a lake town in winter and you may pass dark cottages with no cars in the driveway. From the road, it can look like the obvious answer is sitting right there. Just open the empty homes. But housing is not that simple. An empty house is not always a home someone can enter. It may be condemned. It may need a roof, heat, plumbing, or thousands of dollars in repairs. It may be owned by someone waiting for prices to rise. It may be seasonal property, a short-term rental, or a place that is empty in February, but not available to Marlene at any price she can pay. This is the open secret in Michigan's housing crisis. The question is not only how many structures exist, the question is how many homes are actually available. Available means a landlord is ready to rent it. A seller is ready to sell it. The unit can legally be occupied. The price is reachable. The location is connected to work, school, medical care, and transportation. The door is not just there. The door can open. Earlier, I asked you to guess the number. What percentage of Michigan homes do you think are actually vacant and available for rent or sale? Most people guess too high because the landscape tricks the eye. A vacant-looking building feels like supply. A dark cottage feels like supply. A quiet block feels like supply. But a housing market does not run on what appears empty from a car window. It runs on what people can actually move into. That gap is where homelessness grows. It grows when a family has income, but no landlord will take the voucher. It grows when a senior can pay something, but not the market rent. It grows when a worker can clean hotel rooms in a tourist town, but cannot rent one apartment nearby. And for the poorest renters, the shortage is sharper still. National housing researchers found that Michigan has only a limited supply of affordable and available rentals for extremely low-income households. Even before a crisis becomes visible, the exit door is already crowded. So before we reveal the number, remember what we have seen. The car, the motel, the shelter list, the rural road. They are not separate stories. They are what happens when the map has too few doors that open. The road has brought us here for a reason. Not to a tent city, not to one shelter, not to one bad landlord, one broken car, or one missed paycheck. It has brought us to the door because every homelessness story reaches the same question. Can this person get inside somewhere stable? For Marlene, that question is not philosophical. It is practical. Is there a room she can afford? Is there a landlord who will call back? Is there a unit close enough to work? Is there heat? Is there transportation? Is there a place where she can sleep without choosing between gas and warmth? From the road, Michigan can fool you. You see houses, you see buildings, you see cottages dark in winter. You see blocks that look empty enough to make the crisis seem solvable by common sense alone. But common sense from a car window can be wrong. A structure is not the same as housing. A vacancy is not the same as access, and an address is not the same as a home someone can actually enter. So now remember the question from earlier. You guessed a percentage, maybe 10, maybe 8, maybe 5, because 5% is close to what housing experts call a healthy level of availability. But Michigan is not at 5. It is not close to 5. And for someone like Marlene, that gap is not a statistic. It is the distance between a parking lot and a bedroom. Only 1.8% of Michigan homes are actually available tonight. Not empty homes, not paper supply, doors that open. That is the number underneath the road. Only 1.8% of homes in Michigan were vacant and available for rent or sale in 2024. The state's own housing data explains why the word available matters. Some vacant homes need repairs. Some are in foreclosure. Some are seasonal. And some simply cannot be occupied. So when people ask why homelessness keeps spreading through places that already have buildings, this is part of the answer. The door exists, but it does not open. And for extremely low-income renters, the shortage tightens even more. The national affordable housing gap is not a side issue. It is the system behind the windshield, the motel hallway, the shelter list, and the rural road. This is why Michigan matters. It shows us that homelessness is not only about who is outside. It is about how few doors are truly open. And once you see that, the next question becomes harder. Who is trying to open them? After the reveal, it would be easy to look for a villain. One agency, one mayor, one landlord, one neighborhood that said no. But Michigan is more complicated than that. A shelter worker cannot create an apartment by staying late. A county official cannot solve a statewide shortage with one grant cycle. A landlord may want to rent, but still worry about repairs, insurance, missed payments, and inspections. A small town may want to help, but have no bus line, no large shelter, and no extra staff for a crisis that arrives after office hours. Even the state is not doing nothing. In fiscal year 2025, Michigan's housing agency reported $2.61 billion in housing investment. It produced preserved or financed 12,414 housing units, including rental assistance, community grants, neighborhood funding, and homelessness prevention money. That matters. This is not a story where nobody noticed the problem. Michigan has action plans. It has coordinated entry. It has prevention goals. It has people trying to shorten homelessness stop returns and build more affordable housing. But this is the hard part. A system can be working and still not be working fast enough. A shelter can be full and still be necessary. A landlord can have real concerns and still leave someone outside. A city can approve housing and still lose people to winter before the units open. That is why blame alone does not explain the road we have traveled. The road shows capacity. It shows timing. It shows that a person can need help tonight while a housing project opens 2 years from now. For Marlene, a policy timeline is not a warm room. A future development is not tonight's key. A statewide plan is not someone answering the phone before her battery dies. So the counter-argument is real. Solutions are being tried. Money is moving. People are working. But the crisis is moving too. And to understand what actually changes the road ahead, we have to look at what works when the temperature drops. The shelter is full, and the next safe place has to exist now. If the last act was the counter-argument, this act is the test. What actually works when the road is cold? The first answer is prevention. Not after someone loses the apartment, before. A late rent payment, a utility shutoff, a landlord notice, a car repair that takes the last $100. The cheapest homelessness intervention is often the one that keeps the door from closing in the first place. That is why diversion matters. Diversion asks a practical question before shelter becomes the only option. Is there a safe place this person can stay for a few nights? Is there a small amount of help that keeps a family from entering the system? Is there mediation, transportation, paperwork, a deposit, or 1 month of assistance that changes the next step? The second answer is housing that is deeply affordable. Not just new apartments, not just market rate construction. Homes priced for people who are actually at risk: seniors on fixed incomes, workers with unstable hours, families, one paycheck behind, people leaving shelter with no cushion at all. Michigan's current action plan points in that direction. It names prevention, diversion, supportive housing, affordable housing, racial disparities, lived experience, and stronger data as part of the work ahead. The third answer is supportive housing. For some people, a key is not enough. They need treatment, case management, mental health care, disability support, help replacing documents, help staying housed after the door opens. Without that support, a person can exit homelessness on paper and return months later. The fourth answer is rural access. In Michigan, a solution that works only in the largest cities leaves too much of the state outside the frame. A small county may need transportation, mobile outreach, motel partnerships, regional coordination, and winter plans that do not depend on a person already being near a service desk. And yes, building matters. Michigan is investing billions. It is awarding housing credits. It is financing and preserving units. In 2026, new tax credit awards promise more affordable rentals from Detroit to Traverse City and Sault Ste. Marie. Those steps are real, but the test is not only how many units appear in a press release. The test is whether the next Marlene has a door before the car battery dies. A housing system works when the road gets shorter, when the call is answered, when the voucher finds a landlord, when a shelter stay becomes a bridge, not a loop. And if that is what works, then the cost of not doing it is no longer abstract. If the last act asked what works, this one asks what happens when it does not. The cost does not arrive as one bill. It arrives as winter. A person stays in a car longer, and the cold becomes a medical risk. A family stays in a motel longer, And the money that could have become a deposit disappears one night at a time. A senior misses medication because the pharmacy, the shelter, and the appointment are not on the same route. Michigan's own numbers show the system slowing down. The average length of homelessness rose from 80 days to 89 days between 2023 and 2024. That may sound like 9 days on paper. On the road, 9 days is a lot. 9 more mornings looking for a bathroom. 9 more nights worrying about the car battery. 9 more chances for a job to fall apart because sleep did not happen. And then there is the loop. When people exit homelessness but return later, the system pays again. The person pays more than again. Michigan's action plan names returns to homelessness as one of the measures it wants to reduce, because every return means another round of intake, forms another shelter bed, another crisis call. Doing nothing also moves costs onto other systems. Emergency rooms become warming centers after the damage is done. Libraries become charging stations. Police become first responders to housing problems they cannot solve. Schools become the place where a child tries to act normal after sleeping in a car or a motel room. This is why homelessness is never contained. If the housing system does not open a door, another system absorbs a person. Healthcare, education, jails, child welfare, emergency response. The bill gets passed around until everyone is paying it, except no one is solving it. For Marlene, the cost of doing nothing is simpler. Another cold morning, another call, another parking lot. And if Michigan wants to stop paying for homelessness everywhere except housing, it has to return to the person inside the car before the car becomes the system. By now, Michigan is no longer only a map. It is a woman in a parked car watching the frost melt slowly from the inside of the windshield. Marlene has learned to measure safety in small units. A full phone battery, a bathroom that is open, a clerk who does not ask questions, a friend who says, "One more night," a parking space where nobody knocks on the window before dawn. She does not need a speech about resilience. She has already been resilient. She was resilient when the motel money ran out. She was resilient when the first shelter call went nowhere. She was resilient when she folded the intake paper and put it behind her driver's license, because losing that paper would mean starting over again. But resilience is not housing. This is the mistake America keeps making. We praise people for surviving systems that should not require so much survival. And Michigan is not an exception. In Ohio, a laid-off worker can sleep behind a big box store while waiting for a voucher callback. In Wisconsin resort towns, a housekeeper can clean lake cabins she could never rent. In Pennsylvania's old industrial counties, a senior can hold the same folded intake paper Marlene keeps behind her license. The parking lots are coming. That is the mirror. Not that everyone will become homeless tomorrow, but that the distance between housed and unhoused is shorter than many people want to believe. One medical bill, one rent increase, one broken car, one family conflict, one winter where the wrong door closes at the wrong time. Marlene's story is fictionalized, but the pressure around her is not. It belongs to the count. It belongs to the annual report. It belongs to the housing market. It belongs to every place where people can work, age, raise children, pay taxes, and still lose the door. So when we return to her one last time, do not ask whether she made every perfect choice. Ask what choices were actually left, because that is the question Michigan now puts in front of us. So what do we do with what the road has shown us? First stop, treating homelessness as something that begins only when a person is already outside. It begins earlier, at the rent notice, at the utility shutoff, at the broken car, at the motel checkout desk. At the first night someone says, "You can stay here, but only for a little while." That is where communities can act. Ask what your city funds before shelter. Ask whether prevention money reaches people before court. Ask whether zoning allows smaller homes, apartments, and supportive housing near transportation. Ask whether landlords who accept vouchers are supported, and whether tenants facing eviction have someone beside them before the door closes. Support the groups that answer phones when the weather is bad. Support shelters, yes, but also support the work that makes shelters less necessary. And when housing is proposed near you, listen for the sentence that quietly decides everything: not here. Because not here has a map. It pushes people farther from work, farther from family, farther from help, until homelessness becomes less visible to one neighborhood and more dangerous for the person living it. Michigan has shown us the road. The question is whether the road gets shorter. 10 years from now, Michigan will either be the state that treated housing as infrastructure before winter closed more doors, or the state that let cold parking lots become waiting rooms. The choice in some small way is also yours. And before we leave, we need to return once more to the woman in the car. The last time we see Marlene, the windshield is clearing, but the road is not. Michigan gave us the number behind the cold. Next time on No Address, we follow that road into another state where the crisis wears a different face. Disclaimer: this documentary is for educational and journalistic purposes only. It discusses homelessness, poverty, mental health, addiction-related issues, housing policy, and public spending. Composite characters are based on patterns from public records, housing research, shelter data, court filings, and published case studies. They are not intended to identify any specific private individual. This video does not promote illegal activity, drug use, harassment, or harmful behavior. Some footage has been edited or blurred for privacy, safety, and compliance with YouTube community guidelines.